This episode is sponsored by Fostering UK, one of the UK's premier fostering agencies. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, you will know that we do not promote things lightly. If we talk about it, it's because we genuinely believe in it. And this one's personal. Louise actually fosters for them. After years of difficult experiences elsewhere, particularly around poor support and lack of real therapeutic understanding for the children in her care, she transferred to Fostering UK, and they do exactly what they say they do. And that's rare in our sector. They are therapeutic foster care specialists. The support is real, the training high quality, the matching is thoughtful, and the relationships feel human, not corporate. They focus on quality, proper therapeutic training, minimal placement breakdowns, and genuinely putting carers and children and families first. So, whether you're completely new to fostering or you are an experienced carer feeling unsupported and thinking about transferring, this could be very, very, very different for you. If you'd like a personal introduction, you can email us at sarahanderson@fosterwiki.com or louise@louise-allen.com. Right, let's get into this episode. Hi, Louise, and hi, listeners, and welcome to episode 15 of Foster Care Uncovered. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you, Sarah. It's lovely to see you, and hello to all our fantastic listeners. I hope you're well, particularly our foster carers. I wanted to share some interesting and exciting news, which was given to me by our producer. And that is that we have over 15,000 downloads to our
Ooh,
podcast. I know, who would have thought? And
ah,
one in particular I want to highlight is the one that had the most downloads in less than a week was the one on allegations with our special guest, Dr. Chris Harkensey. It obviously meant a lot to people
yeah.
and resonated with a lot of people. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Chris.
Yes, and thank you, Chris, as well for such it was it was a very elegant episode in the sense that I loved the fact that he represents us. He puts the children first, and throughout that podcast, you could hear the children coming through. He was also very calm and respectful, and had gone through the process exactly as he should do. And I think that actually probably that made it even more alarming. But yes, let's go on. Let's start with the news item. I think we need to speak about something that's quietly creeping through the background of the current government consultation. It's been around for quite a long time, but suddenly there's an enormous push by it from on it. And it's this proposal for a national register of foster carers. On the surface, it's barely noticed, almost invisible, and I think you'll find that's the point. But make no mistake about this. This isn't about transparency. It's not about solving a problem that doesn't already have huge numbers of legal safeguards. And the way it's being pushed is, I think, very disingenuous. Very few foster carers will even realise it's happening or what it really means until it's too late. And I suspect that's the intent. It's a bit one of those situations where foster carers don't need to bother their little heads about this. It's just something that's going to happen to them. But I think, in all honesty, we're way past that now with foster carers, which is maybe why they're trying to push it through even quicker. I don't know. It's a puzzle to me. Anyway, on the sound of it, it sounds reasonable. A national register. I mean, who could object? But if you look closer at it, and the first question is obvious, a register of what exactly and to solve what problem? Because here's the reality, foster carers aren't operating in an unregulated system. They never have. Under the Fostering Services regs, 2011, I think it is, every fostering service must maintain a register of carers. The approval involves, enhanced DBS checks, detailed Form F assessments, panel scrutiny, What else? Ongoing supervision, unannounced visits, annual reviews. As foster carers, we're intensely supervised and scrutinised profession. So a national register wouldn't fill a regulatory gap, would it really? It would just it's going to add another layer of bureaucracy, basically, and it's basically a list. Supporters of it, and I have to say, I will say actually, it is a long time obsession of the fostering network. And when the government say that several organisations have put this forward, I would like to know who the others are, because I've never heard anyone other than the fostering network put this forward. So it's a national register, wouldn't fill a regulatory gap, add another layer of bureaucracy. The supporters of it, i.e. the fostering network, argue that it will make placement finding easier, interagency transfers easier, but the barriers to those aren't lists or a database. There's a shortage of carers, regulatory transfer processes, and candidly, the occasional misuse of allegations to block movement. That's more prevalent than we'd like to think. And the database doesn't create carers or remove these sort of structural objects in the way. So what it does do, though, is, well, it's a mystery what it does. There's an argument that the register enhanced safeguarding. Well, how? Safeguarding is, of course, vital, but carers already undergo DBS checks, continuous oversight, suggesting that a register is needed, implying the entire workforce is inherently unsafe based on a handful, let's face it, of isolated cases, is overkill. So what are they saying? It's a new sort of criminal record for foster carers. You see, the underlying reasons for its real existence are quite different to what they're pushing. They are saying that it'll help matching. How? Because and it'll solve the placement problem because you'll be able to see where there are empty beds. How? Foster carers can only work for the agency or local authority that they're registered for. And trust me, this register is not replacing that. And they are set in law. So that just can't happen. And as for this sort of spurious thing about, it'll stop children being placed far from home. Really? Well, how's that then? It's very, very, very difficult to understand these. But if you're a foster care and you don't know, I mean, I'm not pretending I know more. I just happen to know more because of what I do and how long I've done it. But pretending it does those things in order to, can we use the gaslighting word? Gaslight carers into thinking it's a great idea. The government consultation sounded a bit like that. So what they're trying to make it sound like is actually something carers have wanted for a long time, which is a central licensing body. That's where you go, you're not registered with the local authorities agencies, you go to the central licensing body, you are assessed and approved by them, you're trained by them, you are licensed as a foster carer, and you apply for a job just like everybody else does as a foster carer. So you'd go to your local council and saying, have you got any foster carer jobs? I'm applying. Then the allegations are also dealt with by your independent body, not in-house in those kangaroo courts. So it's quite a different thing. The register, listen, everybody, including local authorities and agencies, and all those involved in the sector, because I'll tell you why in a minute, the register is not that. So here's another thing alarming carers, that if they go on the register, it will be non-negotiable. You'll have to join the register because the local authority or the agency are the ones who will send every last detail about you, and they're the ones that will register you, not you. There are so many alarming questions and nobody is asking the questions. What's happening is, Louise has got a hand up. What's happening is the questions that are getting asked are on like the consultation, like, how do you think this would enhance your fostering? Well, how would they know that if the other questions aren't answered and it's being promoted as something it's not? So the practical questions are alarming. Who's going to control it? Who decides who's on it? How accurate is the data? Who has access? How do carers challenge errors? We already have a huge number of carers that say there's so much misleading stuff written about them. Where's the governance, data protection, accountability? Who's going to run it? So, call me cynical, but is this a tender that's going to go out that the fostering network's going to win again? So I'll go over to you, Louise. What do you think? You got any questions?
Oh, I certainly have. I just been sitting here writing stuff down. I talked to my husband about this, if I'm honest. We feel that this could be the end of our fostering career if this
Yeah.
comes into play.
Mm,
I think it's dangerous. I do
yeah.
have questions. If a national register already exists in practice as a service at service level, what specific failure is this new system trying to solve?
Well, this is it. You see, we've already got commissioning teams. In-house, they should know where their empty beds are. They've got commissioning teams that work very hard to find out, which agency has, so when a young person or a child needs a fostering family home, it goes to the commissioning teams who will find them one. Now, why they're suggesting a register should do that? First of all, it's a much, much more blunt instrument, a register. And also, well, surely you'd just be refining the commissioning teams. They're not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay there. So are we paying double for it? I really, really don't understand. And it's not a question that's been answered.
All right. What evidence demonstrates that an additional national layer would improve safeguarding or outcomes for the children?
None.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
This is just a great big database. And actually, local authorities and agencies should be really worried because this could be a lot of poaching. This is your carers going out of your control locally to nationally, the government having the list.
Well,
Yeah, no, none.
exactly.
There's no empirical evidence whatsoever. And you will hear. So what happens is, again, I'm sorry, last time I bring it up, but it's the fostering network driving this. They say, oh, it's happening in other countries, I suggesting, and and in Wales. No, it's not happening in Wales. It is still at the suggestion stage in Wales. And please, can we stop using Wales as some kind of, I've seen this a lot around, as some kind of holding up a candle to, because they are as in dire straits as England, if not worse, as far as treatment of carers are concerned. And they are in the same dire straits of going down each year of foster carers. So no, it's not existent anywhere in UK. It happens in France, Louise, but they have a central licensing register. They have
Yeah.
pensions, they have salaries, they have protections. So don't let anyone say it's the same as what's going on in France. It isn't.
So this, I mean, what's really revealing itself here? I've got a few more things I need to run by you, but I mean, this whole episode is about support.
Yes,
Looks
so it's
like,
very closely linked.
yeah.
Yeah.
So could this create unintended consequences, such as an increased control over carers without improving the support? Because I don't understand why we're doing this. Who
Yeah, yeah.
who holds accountability if the data is incorrect, incomplete, or misused? And how do carers challenge these decisions or even
Yeah.
know about them?
They don't even have the answers to this yet. They're asking people to commit to something that they don't have the answers for. And you know why they don't have the answers for? Because in their minds, they don't have to. Because of our sort of faux self-employed status, we are very, very vulnerable to control and to, and we have very little comeback to false things that are written about us. But who's going to, this is the problem. They're presenting something before they've actually decided what it is. And then we expecting people to say, oh, yes, go ahead. Well, that's a bit dangerous, isn't it? Because then what? You can
I
make it what
find,
you want.
I find it incredible. As somebody who runs a charity and I go for funding, I have to
Mm,
have proof of concept, and
yes.
I have to have pilots, and I have to
Mm,
have all the appropriate evidence that they have
mm.
worked or not worked or whatever. How can they do this? So,
Do you know what they're saying? Let me just add one thing here. It's another really disingenuous gaslighting kind of thing. They're saying, well, we want you to have professional recognition on a register, just like the ones social workers have. It is nothing like what workers have, and recognizing us as professionals, valuing us and supporting us is more about culture, and it's more about the things we need to fix. Being on a register won't change that. But what's really important is it is nothing like Social Work England. Nothing.
No.
We are set in a different statute. Our work is set in the national minimum standards and the statutory regulations, and in a quite different way to the social workers. Do not be fooled. This is anything like social workers. And I'll tell you what, social workers certainly wouldn't put up with this.
No, they wouldn't. And it seems crazy that at a time of declining carer numbers, is this the right priority, or does it risk further discouraging an already strained workforce? And my biggest question
Mm.
is, who gets the funding to administer all this then?
Well, there you go. Who? They keep saying, oh, it'd be someone really independent, but they gave, when you think of what they do in foster care, they fund an awful lot of people that aren't independent at all, but are very closely linked to local authorities and agencies. And so this is going to be yet another. I don't know whether tender it out, but if they tender it out, the usual suspects are going to get it. And also, can I say as well that it's very interesting that there is suddenly a huge push on this, because it's interesting, and I've said it before, there was an education select committee on fostering which fed into the care review and fed into these reforms. They didn't invite any foster carers along. It was just Sarah Thomas, who is the CEO of the Fostering Network, speaking on our behalf, and she's a social worker. Now, I'm not saying that, it's not a personal attack. What I'm saying is, strategically, that is rather interesting, isn't it? And do you know what the committee recommended to the reforms? That we
Oh,
have a national register.
right. Okay. It sounds like
It sounds very dark, doesn't
it
it? We're
sounds
all
very
saying it's a bit
murky.
murky.
It's
Yeah.
murky
And
and
also at a time
right.
when these organisations that aren't run, but the organisations run by foster carers, and there's quite a lot of them coming through now. Everyone would have seen on social media and the regional meetings in government. These organisations are gaining popularity like the wind at the moment because carers are suddenly speaking out. They don't want to be represented. They want to be represented by their own workforce, which is obviously going to happen. So at a time when these other organisations, their popularity is really waning. They tried by control, blocking, deleting and stopping the narrative. They excluded people from a lot of these reform meetings, especially the one on the register. Carers were left waiting in the waiting room onto some sort of blacklist, and at a time when I think there's something going on that's equivalent to where can we get more funding from? I don't know, but yeah, we
Follow
are
the
quite
money,
cynical.
honey. Follow the money.
Yep, follow the money. Anyway, what my message is to all foster carers out there and local authorities and agencies, given you personally said 80% of you said in the State of the Nation, you didn't support the register. So what I'm saying to you is we can't sit back and sleepwalk into this. Do contact us. Our emails are always in the show notes. Do contact us. We want to work to stop this, and we will do everything in our power to make sure it doesn't happen. So, shall we move on to our main thing today?
Mm.
Support. And can I say, when I was sort of researching a bit of stuff on this and asking around carers and everything, it is so complex. And it's one of the most misunderstood words by fostering services that there could be, I think. You find agencies advertise it endlessly in their recruitment campaigns, promise it in glowing terms. Directors stand on stages saying, oh, our carers are all so well supported. And yet the reality, as we know, is very, very different. I think, can't exclude Ofsted in this because they rarely see the full picture. They meet a tiny fraction of carers. The compliant ones, usually, the ones on message, because they're put forward by the agency or local authority themselves, and they're not really going to put forward certain outspoken carers. And of course, Ofsted inspectors have never fostered themselves, so they don't have any idea what support would look like. There's so many providers now, despite this constant lack of support, being declared outstanding. And frankly, I think that's totally in defiance of the fact that for more than a decade, every government review, every survey, I don't know, every discussion we've been part of, it shows the same thing, doesn't it? That we're acutely lacking in support. We burn out, carers are isolated, experienced carers quietly leaving, that quiet attrition. So if Ofsted stays support is supposedly so strong, why are so many barely holding on? I don't understand that. Much of what the system calls support is imposed, not chosen, and I think that's a big problem. We get a lot of supervised groups, craft nights, pizza evenings, that kind of idea that we need to have a craft afternoon and that support. I'm not, decrying those who love to do crafting, but that is not part of our support network and it shouldn't be. It won't help carers manage trauma, safeguarding crises or allegations. In practice, it's performative, isn't it? Designed to tick boxes, not sustain carers. Meanwhile, frontline experience tells a completely different story. Carers feeling dismissed and over controlled, under recognised. Well, I think I'll hand over to you now and we'll have a look at the stats because I think they paint a really concerning picture and they are empirical evidence as opposed to just opinions.
Yeah, thank you for that. Before we go any further, though, I think it's important to ground this conversation in reality because when you look at the data, which I'm just about to read out to you, a very different picture of support emerges, one that is far more concerning than the narratives we often hear. So, are you ready? So, nearly 80% of foster carers say support is insufficient, especially on weekends and holidays. We've all been there. 78% say their mental health has suffered due to fostering. Nearly 60% say they have not sought support for mental health due to the fear of professional repercussions. I can personally speak about that. Over 50% do not have paid respite or breaks if in their fostering agreement. Naughty. 63% do not feel able to ask for a break when they need it. 63% had more than one supervising social worker in the last 2 years. I can certainly outdo that. 80% are not always given available information about the child at placement start. Uh-oh. Going back to Chris Harkensey. 54% say children's care plans are not always up to date, followed, or effective. 71% of children had more than one social worker or periods with none in the last year, in the past year. 60% say children in their care have mental health needs that go unaddressed. Yep.
Such a biggie, that one.
It's a huge one. 62% do not always have an effective working relationship with the child's social worker, particularly if they haven't got one. Over half saying training provided by their services is not high enough quality or relevance. Death by PowerPoint for most of
Mm.
84% did not find pre-approval training information adequate for preparing them for the role. So that's just
Oh,
foster.
it's just,
We
that's a
could do a
terrible,
whole
terrible
podcast on
statistic,
that.
isn't it? Yeah.
82% say fear of allegations affects their fostering role, with 85% do not feel confident that allegations are handled fairly or justly, or have a choice of support. 75% say feeling undervalued and lack of support and recognition from their fostering service is key, the key reason for considering resignation, along with burnout, exhaustion, lack of breaks. Okay. And when,
Wow. Oh, I
yeah,
mean, man, those aren't like 18% and
no,
21% or even 5%. These are
no.
these
And when
are
you
huge, huge numbers.
and when you step back and take this in as a whole, now remember all that. What becomes clear is not just isolated issues, but a systemic pattern, one where the expectations placed on foster carers are extraordinarily high.
Mm,
The structures designed to sustain them are consistently falling short.
mm. Oh, well,
Yeah.
let's have a look. I mean, I think what we'll do is I'll get our producer, our ever patient um, producer, to put those statistics in the show notes. So you can go and have a look and just take them in yourselves. And when your local authority gets outstanding, and you've got as a juxtaposition those foster carers saying that, and that was from a very, very big independent survey of foster carers. In fact, the biggest ever in 2024. That was run by Foster Wiki, and it is used for, I think it's Foster Wiki survey appears on the current reforms and everything. It's a very, very respected survey because it was actually run by the fostering community themselves, the actual workforce. So, well, Louise, what does current support look like? What should
Well,
it look like?
today,
Should we go through each one and have a
yeah,
look?
yeah. Well, a little roundup, really. Well, today we're unpacking the term support itself because it has become a catch-all phrase that obscures more than it reveals. We'll explore what it is claimed to be, what policymakers assume it looks like, and what it actually feels like in day-to-day fostering practice. Because, and this is really important, real support is asking, what do you
Oh, yeah.
need?
Mm, mm,
Control asks, are you complying? Now think about that. So, real
mm.
support is the person in front of you representing the provider, whatever that might be, saying to you, what do you need? Because we know what support looks like for us in the moment, in our lives, with the children in our care, and they're all different. So if we're not being asked that, we're not getting support, are we?
No, I couldn't agree more. And it's also, it's what do you need, not, are you complying? I mean, it's so, so important because I think that what you're pointing out there as well for me is that what we think support is like, it's a myriad of things, but it also includes, you know, sub team around the child and things, which we'll be exploring in a bit. But um, it,
Yeah, no,
it it really shows what that chasm between what they think it is and what we need. Yeah.
exactly. And at the heart of this is a fundamental question. What do foster carers generally need order to sustain safe, stable, trauma-informed care? What do we need? Because too often, what is presented as support is performative, as you've already said, visible, so it looks good, it's a tick box, it feels like they're doing something, reassuring on the surface, but lacking the depth, consistency, and professional respect required for such a complex role. And I know, and I keep saying to people, and I said it on the BBC, I think one of the most practical things you can offer in terms of support to foster carers is a cleaner to give
Yeah,
us
you see, I'm going to push back on that one, aren't I? Because
it's
you
the
and I
time
differ
and
here.
space, time and space to
Which
think
we
about the
should.
work
We
we're
should
doing.
differ. I had people talking to me about that as well and say they don't want somebody else in the house doing the cleaning. Then I had others saying, if you want a cleaner, pay for it yourself. But also I did find as well with the cleaner remark, and I know exactly where you're coming from. And actually maybe we should look at it as a metaphor in a way.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think what happened was the service local authorities and agencies, rather than tackle all the rest of it, just focused on, oh well, what a good idea, perhaps we should get them a cleaner. And I'm surprised that you liking that because it's a little bit of that old 1950s housewife. Doesn't your husband do the cleaning?
It's not even about that. We both work. He does. It's not
Mine
even
doesn't,
about
by the
that.
way. We
It's
have a
like,
cleaner.
it's before I even got here today to talk
Mm,
to you. I was
mm,
up at 6:30 doing the washing, emptying the dishwasher, taking the dogs for a walk, sorting out the children's rooms, airing the rooms, doing all those jobs. And I would just like occasionally as a foster carer to have the time to think about the complex emotional labor that I deliver to our young people. Because
Mm,
when you are working, I mean, remember, we're people that work full time as well. And it's like the mother load, it does affect my husband.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
Oh,
basically
then
just overworked.
you've got suddenly you're dropped in a few extra car journeys and appointments, and you're shifting your life to the weekend.
Mm,
We are never getting weekends, and I think this is where it is important for foster carers to have time to do normal life like other people.
yes,
That's
I
why,
agree on that, definitely.
you know, so
Yeah.
taken together, these examples highlight a subtle but important issue. What is labelled as support is often designed around visibility and reassurance for the services rather than the effectiveness for the carers. So I think it's the
Yeah.
authorship of what support looks like is done by people who don't foster.
Well, and it's about risk, isn't it? And we'll come on to that when you look at supervision and stuff like that. I think that it is, I don't think support is seen as supporting us. It's seen as supporting the services and the agencies to ensure that, you know, firstly, it looks great for Ofsted. Secondly, that they are complying with all the sort of national minimum standards and checking up on their foster carers. Look, don't get me wrong, there is some great practice out there, and we always say that, but I guess that's not what we're looking at today. And if you look at those statistics, it's quite obvious that the majority of carers are not happy with the support they get.
Mm.
So I don't want anyone doing that. Oh, it's just a few. It isn't. It's the majority. So, yes, there's good practice out there. And I don't think this is down to bad practice necessarily, but bad ideas
Yeah, and I think,
and bad delivery
going
because
back
they haven't fostered,
and back to
themselves.
your what you talked about earlier, the idea of crafting afternoons and cups of coffee and WhatsApp group chats, which are always
Mm.
policed by social workers.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Not on mine.
Mm, mm.
Um, this isn't support. This is occupying a bit of time that we don't have. I don't know
Mm.
many foster carers that can honestly say, "Oh, I've got 2 or 3 hours spare." I'll tell you what, I go and sit in a room with a bunch of people I don't know very well, which is usually kind of overseen by social workers. The moment you end up in those spaces, you are not relaxing, you are performing.
Yeah.
And what I would say is the greatest gift of support to foster carers is allowing them time and space to be authentically themselves.
Well, independent peer groups,
Yeah.
independent, also respecting the workforce as a strong, responsible, educated set of people who want to support each other, not as a sort of infantilization of a group of uneducated people that really need a little bit of help and some coloring pencils it's that well, it feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? I mean, the support groups in my experience, they sort of descended into sort of gossip and people being cross or I don't like the word slagging off, but they became sessions for that. Sometimes they brought people in to speak to us, but mostly people would really had never fostered either. And again, I'm sure there are good examples around there, but also don't forget, not everyone wants to go to a support group like that. They don't want to be monitored and supervised by a social worker, looking over your shoulder. That is monitoring, it's not support. So those support groups in practice are spaces, those spaces to connect. I never forget very quickly, I went to my local authority and I said, look, these support groups aren't for everybody. Can we do something different? Because I think one of the things we have to do the most is to improve that relationship between social workers and foster carers on the front line. It's a cultural issue and we really need to improve it. And I said to my team manager at the time, I said, notice I say my team manager too, not the team manager. That is something that's really important too. We aren't included. So for me to say my team manager, people are like, oh, yes, actually, my team manager in the fostering department. And I said to her, let's have a day where we have all the foster carers and social workers get together and we have choose from each workforce a foster carer and a social worker, or a couple of them, to give a talk to everybody about their day, how they feel about it, and how hard it is, and what the challenges are, so that we could all understand each other's challenges and difficulties, rather than the social workers saying what they're moaning about, they're just fostering, or the carers saying, oh, bloody social workers. I wanted to sort of get that, smooth that out and say, look, we're all having a tough time. Anyway, so she said, great, what a great idea, and went away. About a week later, she phones me up and said she'd arranged it. It was going to be a cup of tea and bingo with the social workers. I
Oh,
kid you
oh,
not.
oh my goodness. Did you
I
go?
mean, I was fuming. I said, that is patronizing, diminishing, infantilizing. No, I didn't go. And interestingly, all the social foster carers that went, the feedback was, oh, it was awful. All the social workers sat in one corner of the room, didn't want to speak to us. So, in fact, it actually made what I was talking about worse. And then I've had a conversation with the team manager who said, did you hear what a resounding success our bingo afternoon was?
It's
Because
really,
it's the other thing, carers are not going to diss the support they've got, because it's the climate of fear doesn't allow you to put
tell the
feedback
truth.
like
Say as is.
so
No.
yeah. So what do you think groups should look like?
Groups, well, they shouldn't look like that. I mean, there you'll never get a more diverse workforce, really.
That's very true, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you possibly even begin to try and find activities? And this it's like activities on a
Yeah.
rainy day, isn't it? Come on then, wet play. How can you find activities for that many people? You've got people with PhDs sitting next to people who've never, had a paid job in their life.
Mm.
You've got the whole
Equally as important,
and
because I
equally
don't,
as important.
we uphold that hugely. The importance of everybody. That's a diversity, not a one less important than the other. Because also, that's the problem with services.
Yep,
They are controlling of those who they think are a bit uneducated, a bit thick.
yep.
And then they are wary, angry, and defensive amongst people who've had previous professions. Anyway, but we know that's true. That's not and we think that's disgraceful.
So with
I
a
think, they should be led by foster carers themselves, not imposed or supervised by agencies. I think they should focus on professional practice as well, not just social interaction. We get so little time to talk about our professional practice. They
yeah,
should be respectful, professional, avoid infantilization
yep.
or any tokenistic gestures. I suggest that they are spaces to share experience, problem solving, and build expertise, recognizing carers as skilled professionals, but they have to be run, these groups, by people who are also trained to run groups, not just social workers walking around the room writing everything down and overseeing people. There should be peer-led learning, perhaps reflection. I think there should be mutual support at the centre of it all, a forum for genuine professional development. There are growing examples of good practice, I know that, and there's a lot showing this carer-led practice focused groups are both really possible and effective. Not just that, they're so good for recruitment and retention.
Absolutely.
Anyway, you're welcome, everybody who's listening. I'll send my consultation fee later.
And I think I would love to, because every day is a school day, let's be honest. And there, and I love the diversity of our workforce in every single
Me
way.
too.
We've got every faith, every political view, and none of that matters because
No.
we're there for the children. And what I think we should be doing is sharing good practice amongst ourselves and what we deem to be good practice in spite of a really frustratingly broken system.
Yeah.
Things like, how to have a difficult conversation, how to have a difficult conversation not only with your young people and children, but with your team. And I'm part of
Amen to
the
that.
team. So and I wouldn't like to have that conversation with a social worker. I'd like to have that conversation with genuinely with someone who has HR skills or people advice who can come in and offer us advice.
Such a good point.
Because then
Such a good point.
we can then transfer our new skills, our refined skills on how to perhaps manage the conversations within our team and our young people to reduce conflict, to reduce
Mm.
things that at the end of the day are distractions from the work we're meant to do of looking after the children and the young people. And when I say looking after, it's more than buying trainers and dishing up fish and chips. Looking after means paying real attention to their mental health needs, watching them thrive. It's about creating plans for their short, mid, and long-term future with them.
This is support.
That's
This
the
is the
one.
support that's missing. They don't see that the support of us is the support of the children.
Exactly
They
that.
don't see that the support of us is bringing us into the center of those teams.
Exactly.
They don't see that the support of us is making sure that we get access to mental health help, that our children get access to the services they need, that we're not constantly fighting and fighting and fighting to get even the most basic things done for our children. That is support.
The
It's
support.
not a
Exactly.
crafting morning. It really isn't. I mean, you fine if you like doing that, great, but that is not
No,
support. Shall we move on to supervision? Because this is
let's
a
do that. Let's do that.
Hmm.
Do that. Now,
So what does that look like on the front line for you, Louise?
well, on the front line, supervision often falls into a grey area between professional oversight and informal check-in. While this can feel relational, it can also dilute the purpose. So, and I want to be clear that in my experience now of nearly 15 years of having many, many supervising social workers, it entirely depends on who's sitting around my kitchen table. It's down to the individual. It's down to the training and directive they get from the provider for whom they are working for. And remember that I think it's also as important to say that the most supervising social workers have been through many different roles within children's social care. And a lot of them start off as child protection workers. So, and they carry that with them. So you're in conversations, your supervision can, can be anything. And one thing, Sarah, I do want to run by you. How long should supervision be? Is an hour per child? Is it, if you have three children, that's in half the day gone just talking. Things
Well,
like
I
this.
mine was always like an hour for both children once every 6 weeks.
So one
Um,
hour.
mm.
I
But
end up.
I'm sure that, I mean, how long is a piece of string? That's got to vary, hasn't it? Some aren't even getting it every 6 weeks. Some get, I did have someone write to me the other day at Foster Wiki on the helpline saying they were very angry because the national minimum standards and Foster Wiki say that they only had to have supervision every 6 weeks. And I said, no, what we put on Foster Wiki is what the national requirements are, and it should be the minimum of 6 weeks. I said, frankly, if you're getting it every 4 weeks, I wouldn't complain. Make the most of it.
Exactly. And what is it? Without clear structure, consistency, and accountability, supervision risks becoming reactive rather than reflective. Again, it's person dependable. Focus on immediate issues rather than building long-term professional capability. So when we're in supervision, I'm sure a lot of foster carers listening to this will say, well, we talk about the children. Of course you do. You always get in supervision and how are you? It's like they've been told,
Mm,
reminded to ask us. And we all say that classic thing, fine, thank you.
yes.
Because if you ask
Mm,
anyone how they are and you're not in a deep relationship with them and you don't know them and you can't read them, we all say, fine, thank you. And then we move on to
mm.
a conversation. So, what was the point of asking? Learn to read them. So, it's supervisor by supervisor. is my experience. And one of the things that I find really frustrating as a foster carer is, and this goes back to what I would really love in terms of support, is how to work with my supervising social worker to get the most effective outcomes from that time, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I know they're on the clock because a conversation usually dries up in half an hour before they need to go, but we talk about absolute nonsense because then they suddenly go on time. So I know that they're watching their own clocks. But we get bombarded sometimes with suggestions. And I must say, I do have a rather fantastic supervising social worker at the moment called Amber. And she is lovely because she sits there with my dog, who's far too big for a lap. And she sits there hugging my dog, working on a laptop. And we have really lovely conversation.
Mm,
And she doesn't bombard us, which has happened before, with social workers, supervising social workers, who obviously mean well, but they create more work for you. Have you thought of this? Have you done that? Have you done that? Of course you've thought of that. And yes, you
yes.
probably have done that because we're not fools and we
Mm,
have children. We've been doing this a while now. So the idea that, you need people, I think, supervision, and that's why I think the proper support is how to get the best out of that relationship. And perhaps most critically, when serious incidents or allegations arise, the absence or inconsistency of supervision exposes a significant gap between what is promised and what is actually delivered.
mm,
And that's important to us. So what do? They need to advocate for us. And again, this is it's a good supervising social worker recognizes explicitly the creep that is coming into foster carers' lives from children's social workers, where we're doing more and more and more of the work which
mm.
I think is their work. So sorting out the schools, creating meetings, going to contact, family time.
Supervising contact, which actually no
Supervise.
carer should be
There's a
doing. Yeah.
real
Mm,
creep. And
mm,
if
mm,
your supervising social worker is also part of your provider, so if you're particularly in an LA, a local authority, I think the waters get muddied because I have found far better supervision from an independent agency who can advocate without stepping on the toes or fear of people they will sit and walk nearby in corridors or in offices. So it's like, what do we want from supervision? What does that look like for us? Again, support would tell us that our rights, what our expectations, because if we know how to use this time effectively, we will be delivering far better care for our young people, which means that our young people will be more settled and stable. And that's the ideal outcome.
yeah. Well said. I think I absolutely agree with you. And I think that, but here's the thing. See, I'd say it from my perspective, what it should look like, because obviously our teams and the work we do at Foster Wiki, we're all immersed in not just peer support and expertise, but also we have to be completely up on the regulations and the standards, the things that actually underpin our role. Now, so few carers are ever told that. Now, it's a bit like, I don't know. I mean, can you imagine any other industry that you'd walk into, any other sector you'd walk into and work for without actually knowing what the rules are, or what underpins your role? Anyway, so what it should look like, and don't forget, I think with supervision, what happens is because they've got gaps everywhere else, the supervising social, oh, they do that, they do this support, they help you with this, they do that. They're but no, they have a very distinct role. So if you define it under fostering services regulations, that's in England 2011, Regulation 17, each approved foster carer has a named qualified supervising social worker. Doesn't say how many. You'd hope that there weren't that many, but as we know, that's not always the case. I might say actually in Hampshire, I only had two, and they were both brilliant. So none of this comes from a grievance of my own personally, just what I see from thousands of other carers. So the role is regulatory and supervisory. So really what they're there for is to ensure the carers meet the statutory obligations they have, the national minimum standards, the statutory regulations, and that is really what they're there for. They are, support in terms of the national minimum standard context is professional oversight, not personal support. And I think that's really important. Advice, guidance, practical problem solving, reflection on practice, behavior management, and safeguarding, all vaguely come under that. But they're monitoring the standards of care and they're providing feedback and ensuring that carers understand policies. They're notifying of, significant events like complaints, allegations. What supervision is not, it's not counselling, it's not a friendship, it's not mental health support. It focuses entirely on compliance and professional practice. Yes, that can come under the framework. It goes back to what you said. Are you okay? How are you? I'm fine. That is the role of supervision. It is not, it is a supervisory role. The clue's in the name. It doesn't matter how much they try and call them different names, fostering family, support work, or whatever. In law, they have to have a supervising social worker. You have every 6 weeks, and that's what they do. Now, they will expand that role because it's helpful to them because they don't have other people to fill the gaps in. But that's not what it should be. I always tell carers, and our advice is, carers, you take charge of what supervision looks like. So when the meetings are in your own homes, you set the scene, you set the structure of the meeting, you control the narrative. Being in control ensures professional respect, clarity of boundaries, and that your perspective is properly heard. Now, I suggest that people sit at a table, you have your laptop on you, you have a coffee, you're boundaried, you keep an eye on time, do all of those things to make sure that you're professionally seen. Ultimately, the welfare of the children in our care depends on carers meeting those standards consistently. So we can't say, oh, that's all rubbish, we don't do any of that. It's terribly important that we do. But that would be my ultimate message across for supervision.
And can I just bring in something? I've noticed, not my supervising social worker, but a lot of foster carers are now in these meetings where supervising social workers are using magic notes to record their meetings. Can we just say that when local authorities or providers use magic notes, that you must get those
you get a copy that you sign off before they leave.
Yeah, try and get that
because they're causing quite a few problems in the same things about the AI isn't quite interpreting things right. Remember, fostering is such a nuanced thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So basically, our advice to carers, if it's Magic Notes or any other online platforms, get a copy, and it's absolutely your right to. Don't be shy, ask for it. Got to have it because it's done instantaneously. So you just immediately get a copy emailed to you and you both go through it and check that it's okay because it'd be a summary. So absolutely. I mean, shall we move on to a break now? Gosh, we could talk about these things forever. After the break, we're going to come back and look at breaks and respite for carers as being part of support, what that should look like. We were going to talk about mental health, but we decided it was such a big subject. We're going to have a podcast on the mental health of foster carers probably next time on the time after. So we not only recognise mental health, but we recognise it as one of the most fundamentally important things. Hence, it's going to get its own podcast. We'll talk about education. We'll talk quickly about support organisations and the government's latest reforms. And we'll try and hurry up because I'm sure we're way over time by now. So shall we go to a break, Louise?
Yep.
We'll see you afterwards. This is an advertisement for Foster Wiki Support Plus. If you're a foster carer listening to this podcast and nodding your head, then this is for you. We founded Foster Wiki because we are carers. We have lived in the support gaps, so we know exactly what's missing. We know about the long hours managing complex trauma, the high-stakes decisions, the challenges of working in a fractured system, and the need for support 365 days a year. That's why Foster Wiki membership means so much to our members. This is support that really works. It's genuine frontline experience and understanding. It's solution focused problem solving and real professional development through the National Foster Carers qualifications. We want to support you to create a secure base for the children in your care safely and sustainably, whilst also feeling professional, confident, and respected. The joining link is in the show notes. It's exceptionally good value, and currently there is an offer for annual membership with 2 months completely free. Right, welcome back, everybody. So let's get straight into it. Breaks, respite, holidays, whatever we're going to call it, because there's a bit of good
Oh,
controversy there, isn't there?
oh, this is gonna, I bet everyone's going, right, okay, come on, bring this on, bring this. Okay, breaks and respite. Language matters here, doesn't it?
Mm,
Because it shapes how both carers and systems understand need. Terms like respite or even breaks can unintentionally minimize what is, in reality, a core safeguarding requirement.
mm. Also, can I just mention that people will go, we don't use respite anymore. We use breaks, or we don't do that. We use holidays. To be honest, I mean, we don't use respite much, but we're using it because it's a policy word. So when does it become policy? And when I don't talk to a child and go, I need some respite from you. We really need to make it clear that, actually we're probably more likely to need respite from services than we are our children. And actually the everyday grind of what we do, but also breaks is a hard word too, because that suggests you're taking a break from them. And holiday can be even worse, because then it sounds like you're going off on a luxurious 2-week Caribbean cruise, and wouldn't possibly take the children with you. So there isn't a great word for any of this, but maybe we'll make one up later. But yeah, back to you.
And I think a lot of these words are embedded in the culture of what we do anyway, so it's hard to change them. And then I always think, is changing a word really relevant? We're in the middle of a national crisis right now. Yeah. What we are talking about, though, is sustainability of care. And without structured, stigma-free opportunities for carers to rest and recover, the system places both carers and children at risk. More risk.
Mm.
I'm sure many of you have been in those situations when you are on your knees, when you literally can't string a sentence together, because you are doing 24/7 care. And if they're not right in front of you, you're still clearing up, you're still sorting it out, you're still working out where they can go here, get that, do this.
Reporting, recording.
Exactly.
Mm.
So, it's hard work. And I have noticed that first respite, and I'm going to use that word for the sake of this conversation, is harder and harder to get because there are less and less foster carers. So that's not helping either. So, there is no longer opportunity when they used to say, yes, perhaps, you can have a weekend, we'll put the child in our with some respite carers. There aren't any.
And
Where
then also on the recruitment side of things, when people are talking to the best recruiters by far are foster carers themselves. So they're talking to a foster carer and saying, oh, you foster. And in the back of their mind, they think, oh, that sounds interesting. And then the carer goes, oh, I'm completely exhausted. I'm totally burnt out. I think I've got compassion fatigue. I don't know how long I can keep doing this. That is not the best advert.
It's really not, is it? It's a really bad advert. And also, if you go on holiday, now I always say to, and I've said to supervising social workers, says, oh, you're going on holiday, but you don't want to take this child with you. And I say, when you go on holiday, do you take your work with you?
Mm.
Because when we go on holiday with some foster children, it is a nightmare. Not only is it a nightmare and extremely challenging and difficult, and my goodness, all those safeguarding requirements go out the window when you're out of the country, and suddenly they don't want to see the accommodation, and you don't know what's going on, and the child has probably never been away before. So it can be a sort of mini hell, which we also fund out of our own pockets. And if we dare complain, you might get an allegation or some kickback on that. So holidays are meant to be a break from the
Mm.
work you are doing. And to no one else, supervising social workers, children's social workers, their managers, that you suddenly go, we're away next week. I'm away for the next 2 weeks. We don't say to them, how dare you? You know, why are you going
Mm,
on holiday?
mm,
Why are you abandoning your workplace? There is a huge amount of guilt thrown at
yeah.
us just for wanting a break, and we need a break. How can we have consistent care? How can we avoid the risk if we are literally shattered? And my friends, my foster carers, the biggest problem I see is that you have stressed, worn out, tired foster carers looking after stressed, worn out children.
Yeah, and I always,
So
but
good for them.
but also there's this, when you say you want to take your work with you, there'll be people going out there going, "Oh, that's sickening. You see, they should just be part of your family." The thing is that some are on
Yeah.
long term, and they've got little ones, and they're part of the family, and they wouldn't dream of going away without them because that's the right thing to do at that time. It is not the right thing to do for 50, 60% of carers. And you literally do need to stop and recharge. I always used to joke with my youngsters, my teenagers, and say, look, I don't need a break from you. I just need a break from all of it because they knew the challenges that we had between us, always trying to get what they needed. I used to have one, bless her, she'd turn around to me and say, I'd need a break from me if I were you. So just laughing about it. But they knew that we loved them. They knew that we weren't running away. They knew that Sarah and Tim were going away to have some grown-up time on their own, take a deep breath, sit somewhere quiet and recover. And that is exactly what you need to do because burnout, compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress disorder, these things are real. And
I'm very serious.
and don't think they don't exist because you don't give people breaks or mental health support. And you're absolutely right. How can we create those secure bases, those secure, loving family homes for children when we're off our heads,
Literally dribbling in the corner, rocking.
dribbling in the corner, rocking?
Exactly. So when carers stop asking for breaks, which we do after a while, we just think,
Mm,
well, it's just not worth asking because where they're going to go, they'll give you,
mm.
oh, we're going to look at this or that, and there's no one to go and look at this or that with because there's a shortage of foster carers, not because we don't need them, but because how the system responds. It makes us feel that we're not being resilient. We're trying to be resilient by being humans and not robotic and charging our batteries. That is how we are resilient. This is a warning sign of a system that is under strain. If we are not asking, if we cannot ask for what we are entitled to,
Need what we
you
need.
you go back to
Mm,
support. What is it you need is support.
mm, mm,
The
mm,
question we need to hear.
mm.
And if you need a break, I mean, I've been in situations where I'm literally, I don't know, I can't, when you can't think straight, you are so stressed
Yep. I
because
remember once going to, we went to a disruption meeting or whatever. A child of ours had absconded or run away, run to for several weeks, and she was doing it again. And we were chasing around the country. We were up all night because, of course, we're not on shift work like everybody else is, but we're expected to answer the phone at 3 a.m. or run off at 3. We were on our knees, and I remember they gave us the weekend off, so, which was quite handy because the child wasn't there anyway.
the
And
danger of that
if
is
she
you
did
just
come
end up
back, she was to
catching
ring
up.
us and we were to come straight home. But no, she wouldn't have come. We were given the weekend off. So we went up to Blenheim Palace, stayed overnight. And I remember got up to Blenheim Palace, sat at the cafe and just hanging really. And my husband, what do you like? And I said I wanted some soup and which soup I want. And he came back and he'd given me the wrong soup. And I burst into tears
It
with my
takes you,
head in my soup, weeping. And he was just staring at me. And I was just, it wasn't even about the soup.
I know,
I was
I
just
know.
at the end. And I'm a psychotherapist, for goodness sake. I understand these things, but I was just beyond it and
Yeah.
crying into my soup with the rest of the people in the cafe thinking, God, it's a bit of a spoiled brat, isn't it? Got the wrong soup and now she's weeping.
Oh, she must be a foster carer.
But I think people have to understand that it can get as intense as that.
it can make you very ill. It can make
Mm,
you very,
mm,
very, because not only is the level, it's not, it's not just the children. The children we can rationally kind of work towards and plan. This is why I'm saying we need time in our heads and
mm,
space in our heads to,
mm,
which is why I say I'd love a cleaner. I've got a cleaner, but I'd love everyone to
mm,
have some support.
mm, mm. I think I'd like to say as well that let's make it really clear about this idea that and if it does happen, it's totally down to the corporate parent if it does happen. But we never sent our children off to people they didn't know. We had teenagers anyway, or young teenagers, but they used to go to Auntie Pauline, or they'd go to, these are other foster carers we knew who were very, very capable with teens, and they already knew them. They'd already had coffee with them, had lunch with them, had been socialized with them, and they saw it as a really great thing. It was like going to an auntie's for the same. Shall we move on? Because I'm so conscious that we're going way over time. Of course, we were going to, weren't we? What should it look like? I think foster carers need statutory holidays and guaranteed access to short breaks. I think it should be free from guilt, stigma, and veiled threats, and free from totally improvised last minute arrangements. They're not on. So there's the thing: the corporate parent has a duty, or in fact, it doesn't have a duty, does it? Local authorities and fostering agencies should actively support the physical and mental health of those caring for their most vulnerable children. That should be 101 duty of the corporate parent, to care for, make sure that the people looking after their children are okay, to look after them. Even if they don't care about us, they should care about the quality of care that we're giving. The role is so demanding, so intensive, and it carries. The other thing I would like to say as a psychotherapist is that our sector, our workforce, and what we do carries the highest risks of any profession for mental health issues. So you could be absolutely right as rain as you come into fostering, but secondary stress, you cannot underestimate what happens there. Burnout, fatigue, and that leads to compassion fatigue, where you stop caring as much as perhaps you should. And it is the duty of a corporate parent, if not to us, to the children, to provide the best care they possibly can. Safeguarding and breaks are a safeguarding issue, and you've already raised that. Exhausted, stressed, burnt out carers can't provide stable, safe, loving care. We need that respite too, or the breaks, to ensure that we can do that. I think to want to make it really clear as well, the system needs to guarantee sufficiency. None of this mockingbird, oh, you should have a network of family, where have they all gone? They've usually disappeared because it's difficult. And, your
Yeah,
network often shrinks when you become a carer. But it should be down to the carer to have a network, to them to have a network. There should be enough respite carers. End of. The system has, a corporate parent has a responsibility to, or should have a responsibility to, maintain placement stability, protect children, and help address the wider recruitment and retention issues through giving carers the breaks that they need. It is the responsibility of the corporate parent, not the carer. So
absolutely.
when they say about, oh, it's such a problem, fine, well, sort it. It's
Mm,
your responsibility. And you know why they have them? Because we've never had a legal right to holidays.
yeah,
And then that goes back to the worker status case. They don't want to do that because they don't want to, have that extra hassle of providing sufficient respite carers. So, gosh, it's exhausting, isn't it? I'm exhausted. I think I'm having a
holiday
little. I think
after
I'm having a little bit of a breakdown here.
that.
Talking about it.
Uh,
Mental health. We're not, that's the elephant in the room, everybody. It's huge. We're going to skip it today. Huge on the support service side. We are going to have a whole episode dedicated to our mental health, the mental health of foster carers. So we will move on from that one. Education. That's a biggie for me, as it always has been one of my biggies. I think it's too overlooked when we talk about support, because actually education is empowerment, it is support. The evidence say around 54% of foster carers say their training provided by the service is not relevant or high quality. And actually, recently, I would say that percentage has gone up since funding's gone down everyone's struggling for money. The kind of services in terms of education are getting worse, and they're not very low quality. And I also object to the training departments being run by people who've never fostered. That's a big problem for me. So then there's 84% say weren't ready to foster, weren't educated, they didn't have enough reality. If anybody wants to read the comments around those, go to the Foster Wiki website and look under reports, and you'll see the independent foster carers survey report. If you go to those sections, you'll see the first 50 of each the comments, but there are more available if you want them. Each single question has about 600 or 700 comments on it. We accrued 14,500 written responses. So this matters because training is, training education is support. You know how to do the job properly. If you don't understand the children in your care, how can you respond to their needs? And burnout isn't just likely, it's inevitable if you are constantly carrying trauma that you don't understand what's happening. Too many carers describe superficial preparation, short courses, skills to foster, which I don't think in itself should be hailed as the start of your fostering career. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it, but it certainly isn't education. Stakes are possibly high really here, aren't they? So, I mean, what do you think around what's your experience of education in fostering, Louise, your personal experience?
Personal experience. Well, you're talking to somebody here who spent 23 years in higher education and further education, with my brief being curriculum design and pedagogy. And pedagogy is the learning experience,
Mm.
how we learn and how we take on information and how that works. And sometimes that requires creativity and thinking outside the box. And my experience of most education has in within fostering has been dreadful. Too many PowerPoints where people stand or sit in front of them, where we're all looking at each other. That's the foster carers, where they read out the things. Then they give you the little bits of paper to take home, which by the time you've got home and you've had a leaky bottle of water, have all merged into a
Yeah.
black slipe across the page. Learning,
Now they're mostly online,
and the
which is
ones
nothing wrong with that.
online, and if
Just
you're
that these.
online, if you're on doing the ones online, and like me, you have an Apple, can I say that, rather than a PC, it isn't compatible. So what should take 3 hours of your day can take an entire day.
See, our national foster carers qualifications are compatible with all of them, but
And
also
that
they're
is
different
huge
quality, of course. Yeah,
because
yes, it
learning
is
should be
huge.
it should be
Mm.
a joyful experience.
Mm.
Why do we pull apart and separate out what we know is right for young people and we don't deliver to foster carers? So why would we say to children that are struggling at school because the lessons and the planning is not up to spec? They're not learning things they're interested in, but you're quite happy to sit foster carers down in the most inane, boring situations and expect them to learn. And what you might learn in January actually might not be needed until November, by which time you've forgotten everything. And you might
Mm.
be then self-conscious that what you will be delivering in that moment may be incorrect. So that makes you so self-conscious, you'll probably deliver some work with the children and young people that you don't believe in and probably make mistakes.
Mm.
Also, you kind of for me personally, the most memorable and useful sessions are when the presenter has stopped and we're all talking.
Yeah, the peer groups.
At
Yeah,
a peer group,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
when you
yeah.
feel
Comparing practice, talking
authenticity.
about exploring each other's
Exactly.
experiences. It's fostering 101 for me. I totally agree with you. I think that I think as far as education's concerned, it's um it should be written. I mean, I'm biased because we have done this with the National Foster Carers qualifications. I'll put the link in the show notes. We we saw what the gap was, and it's huge, because how many times do you go to a training and that someone stood in front of you training you has never done the job?
And
It's
that's
ludicrous.
and
So,
I find I think that probably, I'm on the whole quite laid back about stuff, but I find I get angry
mm,
about that. The fact that people who I don't know any other sector where people who have not done the work train people to do that work.
yes, it's crazy. And they have no concept of what it's like in that moment, late at night or early in the morning when you're struggling with a child. Also, I think some of the training is too formulaic, because
Yep.
you learn to do a certain thing, but when you're right in the middle of it, you're like, oh, what was I supposed to do here? I'm supposed to do something or show something or be something. And I don't think that works. I'm going to do a little plug here. We've got this incredible training coming up called the Integrated Approach, with the National Foster Care Qualifications in partnership with Foster Wiki. And it is a real front line. Oh, it's a wonderful thing. Anyway, I won't go on about it, but that's what we need. What really happens in the moment? And do you know one of the biggest bit of education, and you're welcome, everybody, free, that should be everywhere? Know yourself.
Mm. Know thyself. And also what is
The
really lacking.
triggers, what your frame of reference
Absolutely.
is, how you react to
Know your
children.
nervous system. How does your nervous system work? Because if you're
Mm,
aware of your own, you will see what is happening for the young people in front of you and about
yeah.
co-regulation.
And you also, be able to take yourself out of the equation and react from a different place, so
Yeah.
that you can be all in with the child and young person. That's about congruence. That's about empathy. That's about those things. But
Yeah.
I don't think people learn about it by learning what empathy means,
No,
or
they do.
learning what being curious means. I'm not saying they're not good ideas, they are, and they work, but if you can grapple them, we come from a different way of showing how that works, because it's innate in everybody. I am really wary of time here.
I just
So,
need to say also, Sarah, what is really missing in the delivery of education before training education is that we have not even for a second even taken on board the fact that many foster carers are neurodiverse.
yes. Yeah, and I think probably, I think it's like something like 20% of the population is neurodiverse. I'd like to say that it's probably much greater, because neurodiverse people are naturally attracted to caring and naturally attracted to more vocational, real, everyday life work, as opposed to 9 to 5. So I'd say it was bigger, and of course we've got a huge section of that coming up in the integrated approach
And
thing. They
I
are rarely called it education either. It's just
no
training,
training.
and the terrible quality. Also, this is why the National Foster Care Qualifications, we wanted to put out a standardized, thing across the country, because it's like a postcode lottery. And then some carers don't even want to do it at all. It's just a nightmare sometimes. But
There's a really
well,
important one really before we finish on this, and this is a
mm,
message to all the providers and all people that deliver and to all managers and social workers. Please stop using training as a punitive action to when a
yeah,
foster carer didn't
yeah,
do something.
didn't do anything.
When you accuse a foster carer of
Mm,
something, I didn't do, whatever that might be, now you have to do some training. You are killing the very notion of education and learning.
yeah, yeah. It's panel. It's so rife at panel. It went, or when
Stop
you
it.
come out, it's stop it. You come out, don't you? And it's like, oh, it's completely unsubstantiated, unfounded, but we want to get you to go on this training. Well, that
No,
immediately says you did something wrong. You're
no.
right. Don't use it as punishment. Right. Support organisations. We'll just go on this quickly, because I want to just do the latest government proposals as well. I think support organisations. What happened was, they the two major support organisations, which is Fostering Network and Foster Talk, they grew out of seeing an opportunity in the national minimum standards 22.10 that says you should provide independent support to carers in allegations. From that has grown this sort of industry. very well-funded industry where they sell their wares to the local authority or agency to fill that. Now, in the recent government roundtables, we've been discussing about that, and I think that is maybe one of the national minimum standards that will be changed now because it's so outdated. Because basically, what's really important as well, this is what carers tell us, none of those organisations are independent. And when you do want support and help, you do need it to be really independent. Won't I think most carers are understanding what I'm saying here, and it's becoming more and more important to carers, and they're getting more outspoken about it. And they don't want the other thing they don't want to do is be joined to something. When these organisations say we've got 50 or 60,000 members, they don't. They have a few hundred members, which are the local authorities and agencies. They then claim you, every one of you, even if you never heard of them before, you never signed up to them, you never asked if you signed up to them, you have just now, suddenly you're one of their members, and they're claiming we speak for all carers because these are all our members. It's just not true. So we've been the rise of the new organisations like Foster Wiki, like the National Union of Professional Foster Carers, the other unions and support people have grown out of the fact that it was never good enough. That's it, end of. Because, like me, there's no money in it. We don't get paid. We have some members, but, a lot of members. But even so, we're not funded like others are. We don't win big contracts to run government foster lines and things. We struggle, all of us, and we wouldn't do that unless we thought it was needed. So that's all I'm going to say on that subject. Have
Thank
you ever
you.
had any experience of the traditional support organisations?
I did at the very beginning, yes, because I didn't know that we we were
Mm-hmm.
signed up to them. And I have to say it was woefully disappointing and left
Mm.
us feeling confused and probably more lonely and isolated, actually. And that's not a good place to be when you are already lonely and isolated as
Mm, mm.
workforce. So no, not good.
No, not good. I bumped into them long, long time ago, and probably was actually what has led me here today, really. And I remember an allegation being made against us, and one of them came round, one of the organisations came round and said, "Look, I'll be honest with you, Sarah. Just cop to something, and it'll all go away."
That's not support.
And now I'm not making that up. I
That's
swear to God,
helping.
those,
That's helping
that
failure
is just,
grow.
I was also coming from the NHS and I had a fantastic team there. Um, I was gobsmacked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe. And of course, as I say, it led me on my journey today. So let's have a quick look before we end on the government's latest reforms proposals. They have acknowledged and are fully aware there's a lack of support for foster carers and what that, they know exactly what it looks like and what's going wrong. Because after all, if it was only for you and I and our executive team at Foster Wiki meeting with them quarterly for the last several years, there isn't a single issue we haven't taken to them, including we then did the big survey at their request, really, give us some evidence. So everybody knows what's going wrong. But do the latest reforms address this? Not really, no. What's interesting, they put things out to consultation now, but already announced the reforms. So it makes me very confused about what the consultation's really for. So millions, I'm going to just won't go on about Mockingbird again. You know my thoughts on this, but millions are being poured into the Mockingbird family model. It's cumbersome, expensive, resource heavy, and reaches only a tiny fraction of the workforce. I'm like 4%, and I can tell you now, even with more millions, it's not going to move that dial much. Great for those who think they're effective and enjoy them, not putting them down at all. If those are people who are in Mockingbird, they like it, good, then that's great. But very few do, and very few are in them. So that really, putting huge chunks of the new, well, it's not recycled money into that is a little pointless. Um, Also smacks of I don't know what. It's all going to the same people again, isn't it? They've done regional recruitment hubs. Well, they haven't. They're supposed to do retention at all, and guess what they're using? Mockingbird. They're more focused on supporting people into recruitment, which is a bit of a fallacy, isn't it? And then they've allocated millions, 25 million to these innovative new projects, one using council grants to extend carers' houses. Well, by the time they're selected, permissions obtained, houses are ready, and let's not forget, it's riddled with pitfalls. What happens if they just leave or get an allegation? They come and take it down again. So few carers and children will benefit this. Very, very few. But what does it do? It fanfares innovation, but it doesn't really, because it ain't going to work. I think one of the most alarming things that have come up, and this is all under the guise of support, is getting rid of the supervising social worker and just having the child social worker run the fostering household. Well, we won't go into that. I think we've spoken about that before. And it's the most horrific idea I've ever heard. But I've noticed it creeping in. Do you know when they say slow creep? You think, oh, there it is again. They're kind of landing it softly all over the place, like until it's a thing. So be careful of that, everybody, and make sure we don't. We have a Starling model at Foster Wiki, which is a hub model, but scales up to 100% of carers, not just 4%. Was discussed with the Department for Education officials, and we were going to have a meeting, but since the new minister came in, we've had no follow-up on that, but I have followed it up recently, and maybe we'll have a conversation with them about that. So maybe that they're coming in, being generous. I'm looking at what's happening. Maybe the consultation is about spending some money on some other things, which I hope it is. That incidentally finished on Monday, that consultation. It was reduced from 12 weeks, which is the normal consultation, to 6. Hampshire County carers were emailing me saying, we got this email, what does it mean? It was 2 days before it closed. What's this consultation? 2 days before it closed.
Shocking behaviour.
Anyway, do you want to round? You can round
Yeah, let
up.
me
I'm
round it up.
losing my voice.
What emerges from all this is not a lack of intent, but a misalignment between perception and reality. Because remember, everybody, support is actually asking you what you need.
Yes.
Everything else is about you being compliant. That's not support, that's control. So always say to yourself, let me question what that intent was. Was that support? Did they ask me what I need? Did they ask what the children need? Simple. Support in its current form is too often shaped by systems of oversight and control, rather than by an understanding of what sustains carers in practice, what we actually need. Because people who don't foster are guessing, and second guessing is a very dangerous and cost awful way of practicing anything. So forget that. And where fear, scrutiny, and compliance dominate, genuine support becomes difficult to access. Of course it does, because we don't want to ask, because we're scared, even when it's technically existing. Technically. There are examples of strong, thoughtful practice, but they are not yet the norm. But we'd love to hear about good practice.
Yeah, we would,
Yeah,
definitely.
good practice. Well, foster carers, if you want to tell us about what's working,
Yes, please.
we'd
Yeah.
love to give good ideas to other providers. If we are serious about stability for children, then we have to be equally serious about the stability for our foster carers. Because without foster carers who feel supported, respected, and equipped to do this work, the system cannot hold, and the consequences are not theoretical. Let's be honest here. They are lived every day by the children it is meant to serve. And what does that look like? I'll tell you what that looks like. It looks like more and more foster carers withdrawing their labour from the service.
Yeah, it does. And also not recommending to others. And I think
Exactly.
that perhaps the lack of recommending to others is really all about support at the end of the day. So I agree with you. And we have to, I love what you said. It's what do we need?
Yeah.
And I think that's, and it'll be different for everybody. What I needed might be different from what you need. You need, you like the idea of cleaner. I didn't need that, but I needed something else. And I think that's the other thing. We're all different.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to remember. I do think there's good practice out there. Never said there wasn't. And I think there is better practice because I'd like to say it's because they really care, but I think it's because people are leaving at a big rate of knots. But hopefully there are some that care out there. I'm sure there are. And on that note, I think we'll finish before we do the longest podcast in history.
I'm sure we could.
Yeah. It's a never-ending subject. So watch out for the next one, everybody. We're going to do it on foster care's mental health because, yes, that indeed needed a whole podcast of its own. And it's Fostering 101. It's so important. So goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me, and have a good time and a good week. And love
Yeah.
you. Love you all.
Bye.
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 Bye.